Well, it is way too fucking late, and here is another time that the Witch King will get together and start reviewing another game. Today's game is a OSR game by admittedly a very controversial figure and for reasonable reasons, and though I do not agree with him politically or really on anything role-playing much anyway, I still very much enjoy his games, mostly because he picks such interesting topics. And today's topic for a game is something that I've been lately becoming very interested in, namely the occult. Now, the occult has been a fascination for me for as long as I can remember, um, mostly as something to show up in role playing, but lately I've been getting into it more, I guess you could say hardcore, although I debate you on that. Um, whoever you are. However, I digress. Today's game is a game by RPG Pundit known as The Invisible College. Now, as always, I am going to be reviewing this to the best of my ability, which is far to none. I have almost no ability in reviewing, but I'm getting better, and I hope you'll come along this journey with me. First, you will not be seeing any of this book via screen share, mostly because I can't do it with my computer on StreamYard, but mostly otherwise it's because I don't want to spoil the book for you who purchases it, um, because it is a gorgeous book, and honestly, if you want a really in-depth setting that focuses on um, the esoteric and the occult and um, cults and secret societies and magic, reincarnation, etc., etc. I highly recommend this. But now let's get started anyways, as I have said multiple times already. This game was written by RPG Pundit, and it is copyright 2021 by Well of Erd Press. Um, it uh, is a really simple game. Um, Basically, you just roll a d20 and add in an attribute modifier or your skill modifier. And yes, this is an OSR game with skills. And I know that a lot of people in the OSR are against skills, and myself usually included. However, I do find that there are some games I'm okay with it in, and especially if it's not old school D&D. Regardless, the setting. This takes place in a modern day Earth, and the main assumption is that the modern world is full of people claiming to be magicians and occultists, and literally thousands of books are available in big box stores and Amazon on all varieties of metaphysical, new age, neo-pagan, and spellcasting and all kinds of traditions. Thus, there are countless Wiccan covens, pagan circles, ancient mystical orders, satanic cults, feminist witch alliances, druid groves, and modern voodoo urban collectives that people can join. To say nothing of the number of online internet groups for self-styled witches or mages. However, 90% of it is shit. Nonsense and drivel which has no useful purpose. Of course, that's because at least 90% of people who style themselves spiritual seekers or want to imagine they're Wiccan high priests or master occultists are also frauds. I can attest to this. They don't actually want to find anything real, they just want to put on a kind of cosplay of being interesting for their own satisfaction or more often to impress or shock others. But beneath the surface of all this, there's a true current of magical teaching, Only the very few who are truly determined to seek it can find it. And in the modern world, due to the birth of occult books and esoteric sources, it is both easier and harder to find than ever. Basically, as you play a magician in this game, well, you don't have to, but magicians get cool shit in this game. You belong, nominally, I mean, you can change it, of course, to a secret magical order working on the side of humanity's spiritual evolution, known as the Invisible College. Now, the Invisible College, as I understand it, was a real secret society in the 17th or 18th century, and they were, as I understand it as well, somewhat related to the Rosicrucian order, but this game is pure fiction, of course. They were inspired by a group of genuine magicians, such as Dr. John Dee and Johann Valentin André. I don't know how to pronounce that, so forgive me. They came into contact with the secret chiefs, the disincarnate spirits of ancient magical teachers on one of the highest levels of the astral plane. And with their guidance, they initiated a plan to bring spiritual illumination to the whole of humanity, promoting a universalist concept of religious truth through the Rosicrucian teachings, encouraging scientific development through the creation of the Royal Society, and creating institutions like the Freemasons. Yep, you heard that. If you know anything about old school conspiracy theories, the Freemasons were a part of it for a long time and then they stopped. But in Invisible College, the Freemasons were one of the first institutions they created, and they also used it to promote their worldview, as well as occasionally, especially in the 18th century, recruiting people from the Invisible College, including Benjamin Franklin. Yes, there are many historical people who were a part of the Invisible College in this setting. And if you look in the cracks of our own history, you can kind of make sense of all of the occult touching every part of Western society, um, either indirectly or directly. Case in point, Jack Parsons, rocket scientist for Jet Propulsion Laboratory and founder of Jet Propulsion Laboratory in the 40s, and he was a student of Aleister Crowley, and yes, he was associated with L. Ron Hubbard, but L. Ron Hubbard was just a crazy asshole. But that's just my opinion. Meaning I don't have any wit about anything Scientology, but I did read Battlefield Earth, and it's a shit book, but it's fun for a little bit. Anyways, I digress. The Invisible College soon found themselves opposed by forces of other magicians with more mercenary or sinister motives, and these groups sought to similarly influence humanity, but to the end of getting to rule over them, break the human will, repress social progress, or in some cases, even destroy humanity itself. Now, Pundit would tell you, in his opinion, that the Invisible College stands for classical liberalism. I'm of the opinion that, as a left-leaning person, of course, I can see the left in America being a part of the Invisible College just as much as the right or anyone else, for that matter. But I'm not going to try to get into politics too much. It's kind of hard not to when it's Pundit. Let's see. Chaos magic. You may have heard of it. You may be familiar with it, especially with the gluttony of comic book writers, artists, etc., who espouse it, namely Grant Morrison, and quite a few other British artists and authors of comics. I believe Warren Ellis is a chaos magician as well in real life. But basically, in this game, you play as a member of the Invisible College fighting against antagonistic groups such as the Black Lodge, who are led by powerful magicians who are extremely long-lived and have been around for at least 200 years. And they seek a close comparison to them would be the kind of conspiracy theory about the New World Order. That's the Black Lodge. They want to rule over humanity, set up a repressive human state, and they will use magic, science, and technology to those ends, whereas the Invisible College tries to use them to increase human liberty. Among the other groups that are interesting are the Gormagons, which originally were founded as an anti-Masonic organization created by fundamentalist Catholics in the early 18th century as part of the papacy's general campaign against the universalism of conscience that the Masons and behind them the college championed. The notion that there is a fundamental spiritual truth and a universal God that can be found in the purest part of every religious denomination also means that every institutional or dogmatic organized religion is partly wrong and largely unnecessary. So, as you can bet, the Catholic Church was not a fan of that. And so they were eventually subverted by a group of magicians who had an different ultimate aim in mind. They thought the college's dream of a universal human illumination was not only dangerous, but unnatural. They also found the idea of the emphasis of individualism disgusting. From their perspective, humanity being led down universal attainment and personal liberty is bound to cause destruction, suffering, and even ultimately extinction. They think that human beings are fundamentally flawed, weak creatures who must be kept within strict bounds of behavior, stuck at the level of collective servility to law-giving religious hierarchy. They're not really a part of the Catholic Church anymore. I mean, obviously not, with their occult leanings, and how they've basically become evil. They are another enemy, and you will have to fight against them. But, as you may be aware, if you were into the occult, or even heard about Varg Vikernes, or however the fuck you pronounce his name, he would be someone in the Invisible College who is known as the Order of Thule, an Arianosophy movement, and a German supremacist social movement that was created in the final years of the 19th century. Basically, Nazi Germany, apartheid Europe, or apartheid era South Africa, and I would argue even parts of American and Western culture have been influenced in part or wholly by the Order of Thule, especially in the current day. They're basically magical Nazis. That's about all you need to know. They're really bad, and you don't want to be one of them, but you sure as love kicking the shit out of them, especially in role-playing games. Then you have this cult of Typhon, or the Typhonians. They've been around since the early 1950s, and as I recall, they a chaos magic cult that believes that basically the world's going to end, and so because of the clip-off, or Kelipot, or however you pronounce it, and so they basically worship demons, and they try to exchange service in order to being made into immortal demonic spirits themselves. They're not very resourceful on the whole secret war front, but they have infiltrated a lot of different people and different groups and cults. Then you have the Choronzen Club, which, and I should mention, all of these groups are based on actual orders or groups that existed in the occult history of the West, and parts of other parts of the world as well. Actually, I'm not going to go over all of these because there's only a few of them that I really like and have any terrible interest in, mainly the Thule Society as well as the Black Brothers, and finally, this is the weird one that I really like, the Nemite Hive. Basically, their whole notion of how to achieve spiritual enlightenment is to make every human a drone. And I mean that in the most literal sense. They use magic and presumably alchemical transfiguration, I don't know, something like that, to make insect-like humanoids stripped entirely of their humanity, including race, gender, and free will, and they are completely controlled by higher caste Neomite magicians. So, a close comparison to this group would probably be, I don't know, kind of the anti individualism groups of the past 20 years, especially those who think that all humans should be the same, which, admittedly, I believe that to a certain degree, but I would not want to be a Nemite. They're fucking insane. They are really interesting. Then you have some government agencies that are involved in the occult war. You have MI13, which is the British Occult Division. You have the MSS, Dangerous Cults Bureau, which is the Chinese Communist Party's version of the Occult War Division. Then you have the Department 9, the Kanayim, which is the Occult Intelligence Department of the Israeli Mossad. And you could always play any of these agencies as well as be a member of the Invisible College or just be a part of these agencies. Further, there is the Special Investigations Directorate, or FSB, which is the Soviet Union and now the Russian Federation's version of the Special Investigations of the Occult. And then you have Task Force G, which is the North American Paranormal Activities Division. They are, as I understand it, they are the North American, so therefore they are a combination of agencies from Canada, America, and I guess potentially Mexico. But anyways, those are the agencies, and then there's real magical organizations of non-Western origin. The mythical kingdom of Shambhala, which figures prominently in Theosophy, among other things, is a real place in this game, and it's run by a real order of adepts, magical adepts, who were in contact with the Shambhala masters. Similar to how the Invisible College are in contact with the Secret Chiefs, the Shambhala Masters and the Secret Chiefs are in regular contact. And they work together and they have a mutual respect. But they don't work together per se. They just don't work against each other. But they do respect each other, and therefore the Shambhala Masters and the Invisible College can kind of get along. Then you have the Sidi Isawa, which are Islamic magicians. And you have the White Deer Grotto School, which was founded as a secret order in the late 12th century in Song Dynasty, China. They, as you can imagine, due to holding to religious and philosophical leanings that do not fit in with the Communist Chinese Communist Party, they are completely opposed to that institution and nation, and likewise the CCP does not like them and hunts them down. Then you have the Dakini Bali sect, which are the Indian occultists. They're basically, like, if you ever, I'm gonna review this at some point, but there's another RPG pundit game called Arrows of Indra. And Arrows of Indra, the CDs from Arrows of Indra would probably be a part of the Dakini Bali sect in the modern day. Of course, they're heavily debased over the course of history, which, as often happens, with a lot of groups anyways. Then you have the Dragon Head Society, which is another Chinese group. And then one that I'm somewhat familiar with due to living in this close to the southern border of the US. I say close. I don't mean that close. There is the Santa Muerte Negra cult, which is a quasi-Catholic popular devotional movement in Mexico and Central America that venerates the spirit of death as a saint. However, they often, in their more esoteric sources in this setting, they often work with magic of the left-hand path and use it for less than good means and ends, because they often work with the Mexican cartels, and they use them as a front to spread their cult. And though it, in reality, in the setting, the Saint Death cult is just a harmless group, there are brujos and black magicians who have made use of the iconography and veneration of Santa Muerte as a dark or sinister spirit. So, they work with some of the evil antagonist organizations that are with the Invisible College, and the Invisible College has often come into contact with them, especially thwarting their plans. The art in this game, as I mentioned, is very pretty. So, character creation. Oh, and one last thing. It mentions several mundane world so-called occult secret societies that don't really play any part within the secret occult war. But they may be infiltrated by several of the real groups in the setting. It includes the Bohemian Grove, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, Opus Dei, P2, Rosicrucians, Skull and Bones. Yep. That means that President Bush could have been an agent of the Invisible College. That'd be kind of cool. I might have to do that at some point. Weirdly enough, this book does not start with character creation. It starts with the setting, and then by the time you get to chapter 6, you end up with starting a campaign. As with almost all of Pundit's games, barring Arrows of Indra and some of his other early games, characters stats go from 3 to 18. You roll 3d6, although obviously for reasons I haven't stated, I prefer 4d6, and I have to make characters pretty fucking powerful. There is a single saving throw, which is your 16 minus the charisma modifier of a PC. So a PC with a +1 charisma would have a save of 15, while one with a -2 charisma mod would have a save of 18. And it's used as the base difficulty for all saves, and you roll it by adding 1d20 plus your ability score modifier plus a bonus or penalty. Armor class is ascending rather than descending, as in some of the early OSR games and some of the new ones. Everyone has 30 feet per round. So you have base combat bonuses, which magicians don't really have until unless they take the path of the Templar. The Templars are basically non-magical members of the Municipal College. You have 3 alignments: law, neutrality, and chaos. And then this is the kind of cool part. When you are making a character, you roll a d20, or the GM decides, or you can even choose. It's up to the GM, of course. You can be a member of society who is underclass and therefore has dirt poor wealth, working class with poor wealth, lower middle class, upper middle class, and upper class. Now, the table apparently skews toward higher class backgrounds compared to general population demographics, and this is because it is more common for the comfortable children of the affluent to end up finding their way into occult studies and strange situations rather than conventional religion and a workaday world. That doesn't mean you can't play a poor person who becomes a part of the municipal college. It's just, if you roll, it's not as common. You also get a set of skills based on your background. They're fairly stereotypical, but I mean, that doesn't bother me because it's a game and you can change it if you want. Then you get a career that you were a part of before joining the municipal college, which range from arts and entertainment to sports to military to rural, law enforcement, humanities, or a dilettante. Dilettante's honestly one of my favorite ones because they get a lot of different cool skills. Then you roll a d6 for your event table, and 1 to 3 is event table 1, 4 to 6 event table 2, and this is how you join the college. It could be anything from witnessing a human ritual sacrifice. In the search to understand it, you discovered the college. You could have wanted to know true magical power and thinks the college is the way to it. Exposure to demonic forces has led them to want to fight evil and eventually join the college. Or your character could have uncovered that one of his or her ancestors was a member of the college, maybe even a fairly famous one. And not all of these, but some of these backgrounds will give you a bonus to a skill, which is quite nice. So you roll randomly for that, or I guess you could choose if you really wanted. And then you have your age. Most characters will be will have had at least some post-secondary education. For Americans who are not aware, post-secondary refers to college. Or, and I could be totally wrong about that. I did not look it up, so correct me in the comments if you want. You can play older characters. That, of course, will include penalties for aging. But optionally, a GM might allow in some campaigns that characters who are 30 or older get an extra +1 bonus to a skill of their choice from their background or education for every decade, which is pretty cool. It's kind of like Traveler in that sense, which I'm quite a fan of. Wealth is not really a thing to worry about, because if your character doesn't have any wealth, the Invisible College's halls will certainly supply you with a line of credit or wealth in general. At least for your missions. Probably not for anything else. Then I think that's everything for your character. So yeah, you roll stats, you note down your skills, you roll your background, and now we get to one of my favorite parts in this book. You get to create a hall, which operates as both an esoteric group, like a coven or a lodge, and as an organizational structure, like a special forces unit. They're secret. The physical location and membership of a hall is kept secret, and halls will only have contact with other halls on an emergency basis. They're meant to be self-contained and self-sufficient, and the membership is kept intentionally small to avoid the risk of being compromised. Sorry, my dog's snoring in the background. There are different ranks and degrees of the Invisible College, especially if you are a magician. And if you'll wait just... Oh, and of course, because I'm a huge nerd about Alan Moore, when I ran this game once, I had the players be a part of a hall known as Jerusalem Hall. Okay. Thought I'd mention that. Thought it was kind of cool. Then you have your liquid resources for the hall, which the GM can always choose, or the players if the GM allows. And then you have a front. So, for example, and something I think is kind of funny, is you could be a hall that is a part of, that's front is a religious organization, religious cult, or fake occult group. Or you could be you could be an Invisible College hall that is based in an academic institute, so a university of some kind. You could be a private detective agency, all kinds of things. 20 options. Well, almost 20. 18 options, more like. And then you have your base of operations. And if you really wanted, you could have a hall which functions as a bar or hotel or boarding house or something like that. And you could have it in a bar, which is what the Invisible College did in the 18th century, which is why the American revolutionaries worked in secret, because of the Masons and because of the Invisible College. So basically, you could be based in a bar, and that would be where you meet up, and it could be in a secret room behind or above the locale, which is a tradition dating back to the earliest days of the Invisible College, which, if I'm not mistaken, in the American Revolutionary War, there were secret hideouts for the revolutionaries in bars, and I could be totally imagining this, but I could have swore that I read somewhere that um, the Freemasons, and especially those of the American Revolutionary War effort who were part of it, had secret passages in bars, which I think some of them might even still exist, where they would meet up and discuss plans for the revolution. Pretty interesting, in my opinion. But then again, I'm a pretty weird nerd. Um, then you have resources, which is what it's basically what um, the hall has. It can be anywhere from $0 to hundreds of dollars to hundreds of millions of dollars. And obviously, the resources you spend, you have to keep quiet, because if you spend too much for weird or odd things like weapons, vehicles, stuff like that, or even occult texts, I could imagine the various national agencies being on high alert for stuff like that, and they are obviously for in real life, but also for the occult in this setting. Then you also have some resources other than money. So you could have a private helicopter, a no questions access to a private well-stocked clinic, some hackers, some safe houses, a well-stocked library of history and anthropology, some contacts in local or national law enforcement, all kinds of cool stuff. Honestly, this game is, as I have said many times already, one of my favorites. I actually have another occult-based game, which I think is honestly pretty shitty now that I've been exposed to Invisible College and learned a lot more about the occult. But to each their own. The game in question is Nephilim, which is the uh, only American version of a French game where you play as elemental spirits who are possessing the bodies of modern day people and have reincarnated across history to achieve enlightenment, which is kind of cool. But some people get skeeved out by the whole possession thing, which I don't get. But that's neither here nor there. Other than the basic mechanics, which I've mentioned, you also have a whole host of skills, which you could find applicable to all kinds of games and settings, in the Invisible College anyway. But this is the really neat part that I like. Characters start at level 1, and you could start at level 0 if you technically wanted to. But there are 3 options for advancement, so there are no classes like in typical OSR games. Instead, you have 3 options for advancement, and you can mix and match them however you want, as you level up anyways. And at first level, you get 1 roll on, or 1, the powers for a first rank or whatever, for the advancement. So you can be an initiate of the college, and they get some really badass magic. And when I say badass, I really mean in the truest sense of magic, not meaning something like fireballs or Dresden Files or Buffy or anything like that. This is totally different. This is based on legitimate occult sources. So there's first degrees all the way up to secret chiefs, and that is something your character can potentially do. They can potentially, number 1, become immortal via the elixir of life, or they can become a secret chief, which means that you basically have to achieve enlightenment or attainment of 100 or more. And when the secret chief desires, they can at any time undertake apotheosis, leaving their physical body and becoming part of all creation. Um, as you advance, you get more powers, you get more cool magical abilities, and you get more attainment, which is very good. Then you have chaos magicians. They get a whole host of esoteric theories or magic checks or techniques, like sex magic. Yeah, that's something in this game, and yes, it does really exist. Although efficacy of it, I will debate. Astral travel, banishing, consecration, divination, evocation, invocation, using talismans as sigils, the I Ching, the Kabbalah, runes, tarot, or Banamancy, and yeah, one of the chaos magic theories that you can get is cyber magic, which Pundit will tell you may have been the reason why Trump got elected. Anyways, you can also learn about your past lives, which is very cool. And you can even gain knowledge and insight and have flashbacks to almost all of your past lives, which I think is utterly fascinating because I am a huge fan of immortality and in science fiction and fantasy and horror. Anyways, you gain a standard set of abilities based on your magical path. But something interesting to note is that due to the lethality of the game, and due to the fact that combat is not something lightly attempted even in real life, you don't gain combat bonuses, AC bonuses, damage bonuses, etc. from leveling up. You instead gain it based on the level of combat experiences you've had. So at 0 number of battles, you have a 0 minimum level. You have a 0 combat bonus, a 0 AC bonus, and a 0 damage bonus. But if you get up to 15 battles, which requires you to have a minimum of 12th level, you get a +3 to combat, a +4 to AC, and a +3 to damage. If there is a game that I think this game's bones are made of, probably Dungeon Crawl Classics with a bunch of house rules. The system, as I mentioned, is very simple, as I think most OSR games are. And honestly, if you want a non-standard OSR game, like something that isn't just fantasy, I highly recommend this game. I'm going to link it in the show notes, or as it's also known as the doobly-doo, and you will hopefully pick it up and buy it, and hopefully what I've told you about it will prove enlightening, and potentially it'll drive you down the path of esoteric sources, and you may even find yourself becoming a part of it, as I kind of find myself doing. But anyways, enough about me. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope to do more reviews and more often, more videos. And just as a promotion, I am I am a co-host on Tabletop Junkies YouTube streams. I don't always make it to his streams, but I try to as often as I can. And Likewise, he is going to be joining me as, as a storyteller for a Vampire the Masquerade 20th anniversary game, because I have discovered after purchasing so many 5th edition vampire books, I fucking hate that game. The artwork, the layout, I'm sorry, I won't go into that right now. That's another digression. But anyways, I hope everyone enjoyed the review. If you like it, please give me a like and a subscribe and leave a comment if you like. Um, that is all. I hope you have a good rest of the day or night or afternoon or whatever time of the day it is for you. And I bid you adieu.